The wind howled like a grieving widow, rattling the warped boards of the old porch where grandfather sat, his eyes tracing the horizon as if it held the secrets of a lifetime. Eli, barely 10, clutched the frayed hem of his jacket, watching the old man's trembling hands carve something into a small wooden object. In that moment, under the weight of a gathering storm, the boy felt the world shift like a door creaking open to a truth he wasn't ready to face. The porch was their sanctuary, a rickety extension of the farmhouse that leaned into the Nebraska plains like a tired soldier. Grandfather, with his silver hair and sunken cheeks, had always been a giant in Eli's eyes, though time had bent his frame. His story-soft wars, lost loves, and forgotten heroes had painted Eli's summers with wonder. But today, there was no story. Only silence, broken by the scrape of a knife against wood. "Come here, boy," grandfather finally said, his voice a low rumble, like distant thunder. Eli shuffled forward, heart pounding, as the old man pressed a chessboard into his hands. It was old, its edges worn smooth by years of touch, and one Paisea knight bore Eli's name in delicate, deliberate script. "You keep this close," grandfather said, his eyes locking onto Eli's with an intensity that made the boy shiver. "This board, it's more than a game. It's a map, a promise." Eli frowned, turning the knight over in his hands. The wood was warm, as if it held a heartbeat. "A map to what?" he asked, but grandfather only smiled, a flicker of sadness in his gaze. "You'll know when the time comes." That night, the storm broke. Rain lashed the farmhouse, and lightning tore the sky apart. Eli lay awake, the chessboard on his bedside table, its night glowing faintly under the flicker of a candle. He couldn't shake the feeling that grandfather's gift was no ordinary heirloom. The old man had been different today, quieter, more urgent, as if racing against an unseen clock. By morning, grandfather was gone. Not dead, not missing, but gone, his rocking chair empty, his pipe cold on the porch railing. The only clue was a note tucked under the chessboard. "Follow the knight, Eli. Trust it." Eli's parents were frantic, calling neighbors, searching the fields, but Eli felt a strange calm. The chessboard felt alive in his hands, its weight grounding him. He spent hours studying it, noticing details he hadn't before. Faint lines etched into the board's underside, forming a pattern that looked like a map of their town roads, rivers, even the old oak by the creek. The knight, with his name carved into it, seemed to pulse when he touched it, as if urging him to move. Days passed, and the town buzzed with theories about grandfather's disappearance. Some said he'd wandered off, lost to dementia. Others whispered of old debts or enemies from his past. Eli didn't care for their gossip. He carried the chessboard everywhere, tracing its lines, feeling the night's warmth. One afternoon, while sitting under the oak, he pressed the knight into a square on the board, and it clicked. A hidden compartment sprang open, revealing a tiny, folded parchment. It was a letter, written in grandfather's shaky hand. "The night leads to the truth, Eli. Start at the church. Look for the shadow at noon." Heart racing, Eli ran to the old church on the edge of town, the chessboard tucked under his arm. The building was crumbling, its steeple leaning like a weary sentinel. At noon, the sun cast a long shadow from the steeple, pointing to a patch of overgrown grass. Eli dug, his fingers tearing at the earth, until he found a metal box. Inside was a locket, a photograph of a young woman he didn't recognize, and a note. "Find her, Eli. She's the key." The woman in the locket was beautiful, with sharp eyes and a smile that seemed to hide a secret. Eli had never seen her before, but something about her felt familiar, like a memory he couldn't place. He showed the locket to his mother, who gasped and turned pale. That's your grandmother," she whispered. "But she died before you were born." Eli's mind reeled. Grandmother had died in a car accident decades ago, or so he'd been told. Why would grandfather hide her picture? And why send Eli on this strange quest? That evening, a stranger arrived in town. She was old, her face lined with years, but her eyes were sharp, like the woman in the locket. She called herself Clara and claimed to be a distant cousin, though no one remembered her. She lingered near the farmhouse, watching Eli with an intensity that made his skin prickle. When he showed her the locket, her expression softened, and she said, "Your grandfather was a man of secrets, boy. That chessboard, it's his legacy. Keep following it." Eli didn't trust Clara, but her words echoed grandfather's. The chessboard was more than a game, it was a guide, a puzzle, a bridge to something bigger. As night fell, Eli sat on the porch, the knight in his hand, its carved name glowing faintly under the stars. He didn't know where this path would lead, but he felt grandfather's presence in the wood, in the wind, in the promise of the night. Eli woke to the sound of gravel crunching under tires, a sound that felt wrong in the quiet of dawn. Clara stood outside, her shadow long and sharp against the farmhouse, her eyes fixed on the chessboard in Eli's hands. He clutched it tighter, the night's warmth a steady pulse against his palm, as if warning him to tread carefully. The town was restless, buzzing with whispers about grandfather's disappearance and Clara's sudden arrival. Eli's parents were too consumed with worry to notice the boy slipping out each day, the chessboard hidden under his jacket. The locket's photograph haunted him, the woman who was supposed to be his grandmother, yet somehow tied to this mystery. He studied the chessboard's hidden map, its lines pointing to places he knew: the creek, the mill, the abandoned barn at the edge of town. Each square seemed to hold a clue, but the knight was the key. Its carved name felt like a call to action, a charge he couldn't ignore. Clara began following him, always at a distance, her presence like a shadow he couldn't shake. She never spoke much, but her eyes held stories she wasn't ready to tell. One afternoon, while Eli traced the map's lines near the creek, Clara appeared, her voice soft but firm. "You're close, boy," she said, kneeling beside him. "Your grandfather left you a path, but it's not safe. Not everyone wants you to find it." Eli's heart skipped. "Find what?" he asked, but Clara only pointed to the knight. "Move it," she said. "Trust it." Eli hesitated, then placed the knight on a square marked with a faint symbol, crescent moon. The board clicked again, revealing another hidden compartment. Inside was a key, small and rusted, with a tag that read, "Barn, midnight." Clara's eyes widened, but she said nothing, vanishing into the trees as quickly as she'd appeared. Eli felt a chill, not from the wind, but from the weight of what he was uncovering. Grandfather hadn't just left him a game, he had left him a mission. That night, Eli sneaked out, the key heavy in his pocket, the chessboard under his arm. The barn loomed in the darkness, its sagging roof silhouetted against the moon. The key fit perfectly into a padlock on a hidden trapdoor beneath a pile of hay. Below was a small room, lit by a single flickering bulb. Shelves lined the walls, filled with journals, maps, and photographs, decades of secrets grandfather had kept. One journal caught Eli's eye, its cover marked with the same crescent moon as the chessboard. Inside, grandfather's handwriting told a story Eli could hardly believe. Grandfather hadn't been a farmer his whole life. Before Eli was born, he'd been a codebreaker, working for a secret group during the war. The journal detailed missions, betrayals, and a woman named Lila, Eli's grandmother, who hadn't died in a car accident but had vanished after uncovering a dangerous truth. The chessboard, grandfather wrote, was a cipher, each piece a clue to a hidden network of people protecting something vital. Lila was part of it, and now, Eli was being drawn in. The twist came like a punch. Clara's name appeared in the journal. She wasn't a cousin, she was Lila's sister, thought dead by the family but alive, watching over grandfather's work. Eli's head spun. If Clara was telling the truth, she was an ally. But her secrecy, her sharp glances, made him wonder if she was protecting Heimer the secret. Eli barely slept, the journal's words burning in his mind. He confronted Clara the next day, holding up the locket. "Why didn't you tell me?" he demanded. Clara's face softened, but her voice was steel. "Because knowing too much too soon gets you killed, Eli. Your grandfather wanted you to learn this slowly, to be ready." She reached out, touching the knight. This was his way of keeping you safe while guiding you to the truth. Eli didn't know what to believe, but the chessboard felt heavier now, its secrets deeper. He moved the knight to another square, revealing a new clue. Coordinates scratched into the wood, pointing to a cave in the hills. As he prepared to follow it, Clara's warning echoed. "Not everyone wants you to find it." The town felt different now, its familiar faces hiding potential threats. Eli gripped the knight, its carved name a reminder of grandfather's trust in him. The cave's mouth yawned like a wound in the hillside, its darkness swallowing the moonlight as Eli approached, the chessboard tucked tightly against his chest. Each step echoed with the weight of grandfather's secrets, the knight's carved name burning in his palm like a brand. He was no longer just a boy, was a keeper of something ancient, something dangerous, and the realization both thrilled and terrified him. The coordinates had led him here, a place he'd never noticed despite years of exploring these hills. Clara had insisted on coming, her presence both a comfort and a mystery. She carried a flashlight, its beam cutting through the cave's damp air, revealing jagged walls etched with strange symbols. "Your grandfather carved these," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "He was protecting someone." Eli's heart raced. "Grandmother?" he asked, but Clara's silence was answer enough. Inside the cave, they found a metal chest, its lock matching the key from the barn. Inside were more journals, a map, and a letter addressed to Eli. Grandfather's words were urgent. "If you're reading this, you've found the heart of it. The chessboard is the key to a network, a group of guardians hiding a truth that could change everything. Your grandmother was one of us. So are you now." Eli's hands shook as he read. A network? Guardians? It sounded like one of grandfather's stories, but the weight of the chessboard told him this was real. Then came the twist. Footsteps echoed behind them. Eli spun around, heart pounding, as a man stepped into the light. He was tall, his face scarred, his eyes cold. "You're a hard kid to track, Eli," he said, his voice smooth but menacing. Clara stiffened, her hand slipping to her pocket. "Who are you?" Eli demanded, clutching the knight. The man smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Someone who's been looking for that chessboard a long time. Hand it over, and you walk away." Clara stepped forward, her voice steady. "He's not part of this, Marcus." The man Marcus Lott, a sound that chilled Eli's blood. "He's in it now, Clara. Just like Lila was." The name hit Eli like a blow. This man knew his grandmother, and he wasn't a friend. Clara's hand moved, revealing a small knife, but Marcus was faster, drawing a gun. "The board, kid," he said. "Now." Eli's mind raced. The knight pulsed in his hand, and he acted on instinct, slamming it onto a square marked with a star. The board clicked, and a hidden blade sprang out, grazing Marcus's arm. He cursed, dropping the gun, and Clara tackled him, shouting, "Run, Eli!" Eli grabbed the chest's contents and bolted, the chessboard under his arm, his heart a drumbeat in his chest. Outside, the night was alive with danger. Eli hid in the trees, clutching the journals, piecing together the truth. The network grandfather wrote about was Rayala Group protecting a secret so powerful it had enemies like Marcus hunting it. Lila hadn't died. She'd gone into hiding to protect it. And now, Eli was part of it, whether he wanted to be or not. Clara found him hours later, bruised but alive. "Marcus won't stop," she warned. "But you're stronger than he thinks." She handed him a new clue from the chessboard, a tiny compass hidden in another compartment, pointing north. Eli didn't know what lay ahead, but he felt grandfather's presence in every step, guiding him through the knight's carved name. Eli's breath fogged in the cold morning air as he followed the compass north, the chessboard a steady weight in his backpack. The Nebraska plains stretched endless before him, but the knight's carved name, his name felt like a beacon, pulling him toward a truth he could barely grasp. Every rustle of grass, every shadow, made him flinch. Marcus's cold eyes burned into his memory. Clara had stayed behind to cover their tracks, promising to meet him at the next Marcaro windmill grandfather had mentioned in his journals. Eli's legs ached, but the compass kept him moving, its needle steady even as doubt gnawed at him. What was the secret? Why had grandfather chosen him, a boy who'd never known danger beyond a scraped knee? The chessboard's map pointed to a final destination, a place called the Hollow, but the journals were vague, speaking of a light that had to be protected at all costs. At the windmill, Eli found another clue, a stone etched with a knight's symbol buried at the base. Digging it out, he uncovered a small box containing a ring with a crest, a shield, and star. The journals mentioned the crest as a sign of the guardians, a mark of trust. Eli slipped it onto his finger, feeling a surge of purpose. He was part of something bigger now, a legacy that stretched beyond his small life. Then came the twist. A girl appeared, no older than Eli, her clothes tattered, her eyes wide with fear. "You're Eli," she said, not a question. "Grandfather sent me." Her name was Sarah, and she claimed to be the daughter of another guardian. trained to find Eli if the network was compromised. She knew about the chessboard, the knight, even Marcus. He's not alone, she warned. There's a group hunting the Guardians. They want the light. Sarah's arrival changed everything. She was sharp, quick, and knew the hills better than Eli. Together, they followed the compass to the hollow, a hidden valley where the air felt thick with secrets. There, beneath an ancient tree, they found a sealed vault. The chessboard's final compartment opened with the ring's crest, revealing a glowing crystal light that pulsed like a heartbeat. Sarah gasped. That's what they're after, she whispered. It's knowledge. Everything the Guardians protected. Eli didn't understand, but he felt the crystal's power, its warmth like the knight's. The journals explained it. A record of truth, scientific, historical, human, that could reshape the world if used wisely or destroy it in the wrong hands. Grandfather had been its keeper, Lila its defender, and now Eli held it. Marcus's men found them at dawn, surrounding the hollow. Eli and Sarah fought back, using the chessboard's hidden tools, blades, smoke pellets, tricks grandfather had built into it. But they were outnumbered. Just as hope faded, Clara arrived with others Guardians who'd been watching from afar. The battle was fierce, but Eli's courage, fueled by the knight's carved name, turned the tide. Marcus escaped, but the crystal was safe. Eli stood on the porch again, weeks later, the chessboard in his hands. The Guardians had taken the crystal to a new hiding place, but Eli's role wasn't over. Sarah stayed in town, training him, while Clara promised to guide them. The night, still warm, reminded Eli of grandfather's trust, his love, his legacy. The world was bigger now, and Eli was ready to face it.